In 2016, no company on Earth sold more cars than Volkswagen Group. It delivered 10.3 million vehicles in a single year, making it the largest automaker on the planet. 10 years later, Volkswagen has not fallen to 10th place. It is still number 2. Bentley, Lamborghini, Porsche, Audi, Skoda, and Seat. Every badge reported into the same offices in Wolfsburg. Now look at that company today. The glass factory in Dresden, built to show the world what German engineering could do, has stopped making cars for good. In 88 years, Volkswagen had never shut a plant on German soil. And in July 2026, Volkswagen CEO warned employees that another 50,000 jobs might need to disappear. Combined with reductions already planned across the group, Volkswagen was now considering a future with as many as 100,000 fewer positions. More than 35,000 positions in Germany are scheduled to be eliminated by 2030. Golf production is moving from Wolfsburg to Mexico. And Volkswagen has admitted that some of its German factories operate far above their target costs. So, how does the second largest car company on Earth reach the point where its factories, jobs, and home country advantage are all under threat? The answer begins with something Volkswagen once considered its greatest strength: size. Start with what Volkswagen was actually assembling, because this was never just a collection of car brands. In 1986, it took control of C8 in Spain. In 1991, it moved on Skoda in what was still Czechoslovakia. Then came 1998. Inside 12 months, Volkswagen acquired Bentley, Lamborghini, and Bugatti. Porsche followed in 2012, alongside Ducati and the truck manufacturer MAN. On paper, that looks like a trophy cabinet. In practice, it was something much colder. Every new badge created another group of buyers across which Volkswagen could spread the same engineering bill. A hinge designed once could be paid for across 4 brands. A gearbox developed once could appear in a hatchback in Prague and a performance car in Stuttgart. The man who understood this better than anyone was Ferdinand Piëch. He is usually remembered for how he ran Volkswagen. The industry veteran Bob Lutz described it as a reign of terror. Piëch himself admitted that frightening engineers could produce better work. But fear was only one part of what he built. His real achievement was the modular toolkit. Stop developing every car from nothing, create a library of building blocks, and assemble those blocks into different vehicles. The most successful version, MQB, has underpinned more than 32 million cars, 32 million vehicles, one set of industrial building blocks. That was not merely a brand strategy, it was an industrial money printer, and Volkswagen controlled the most powerful version of it. The rule was simple: shared components only create extraordinary returns when they are built an extraordinary number of times. Design something once, then spread its cost across millions of cars. When the volume exists, the economics are exceptional. When the volume disappears, the exact same system becomes one of the most expensive ways in the world to build a vehicle. Volkswagen learned that lesson early in Dresden. The factory was built for the Phaeton, Ferdinand Piëch's attempt to sell a Volkswagen at Mercedes prices. Bernstein Research later estimated that Volkswagen lost approximately €28,000 on every Phaeton it sold. In 24 years, the Dresden plant produced only 165,508 vehicles. Volkswagen Group can produce roughly that many cars in less than a week. Dresden proved the rule long before the rest of the company understood it. Volkswagen's machine worked brilliantly at enormous volume. Without that volume, it became ruinously expensive. Now apply that rule to the largest scandal in automotive history. In 2007, Martin Winterkorn launched Strategy 2018. Become the biggest, become the most profitable, defeat Toyota, conquer the United States. Winterkorn was famous for carrying precision instruments in his coat and checking panel gaps on the factory floor. People often interpreted this as obsession. It was closer to a job description. When most of the engineering underneath several brands is shared, differentiation becomes concentrated in the small percentage customers can actually see and feel: the paint, the panel gaps, the sound of a door closing. America was the problem. Emissions regulations were tightening, and one diesel engine family was expected to carry Volkswagen's strategy across the Atlantic. Not one model, multiple brands and millions of cars. The EA189 engine appeared in roughly 5 million Volkswagens, more than 2 million Audis, around 1.2 million Skodas, hundreds of thousands of C8s, and nearly 2 million commercial vehicles. So when the engineering reached a wall, the question was not simply whether Volkswagen could fix one car. It would have needed to reopen a shared component sitting inside millions of vehicles, disrupt multiple brands, blow through budgets and timelines, and damage the cost-sharing model on which the entire group depended. Somebody chose software instead. Code detected when the vehicle was undergoing an emissions test and reduced pollution for the duration of that test. During normal driving, some vehicles produced emissions up to 40 times the legal limit. The United States Environmental Protection Agency went public on September 8, 2015. Winterkorn resigned 5 days later. The scandal ultimately cost Volkswagen more than 30 billion euros worldwide, including approximately $25 billion in the United States. But the figure that best explains Volkswagen is not the fine, it is 11 million. 11 million affected vehicles was not only a measure of the size of the lie, it was a measure of how aggressively Volkswagen had shared the underlying engineering. One decision inside one common system became 11 million liabilities, because multiplying things by millions was exactly what Volkswagen's machine had been designed to do. The risk was not completely hidden. Analysts had warned years earlier that spreading the same components across millions of vehicles could turn one defect into a group-wide failure on a scale the industry had never managed. Volkswagen accepted that risk because the savings were worth billions. After Dieselgate, the company needed a new future. Matthias Müller replaced Strategy 2018 with Strategy 2025. Electric, digital, sustainable, forward-looking. It worked as a press release. But building an electric vehicle in the 2020s is not only a mechanical engineering problem, it is also a software problem, and Volkswagen responded to software with the only organizational answer it had ever truly mastered. In 2020, it created CARIAD and gave it a familiar mission: one electrical architecture, one operating system, and one codebase running beneath every badge in the group, from Škoda to Porsche. That was MQB logic applied to software, but without the centralized authority and rapid iteration that make shared software valuable. A physical platform can be defined years in advance, frozen and signed off by every brand expected to use it. That discipline helps physical components remain stable. Software creates value by changing continuously. CARIAD instead became trapped in requirement rounds involving Porsche, Audi, Bentley, and Volkswagen. Each brand had its own demands, priorities, and veto points. Specifications were fixed years before launch, while the technology surrounding them continued moving. Developers described spending large amounts of time in status meetings. Customers received the results. Infotainment systems froze, software glitched. ID models required updates and recalls. Important vehicles were delayed because the software beneath them was not ready. CARIAD lost close to 7 billion euros across 3 years, after Volkswagen invested an estimated 12 billion euros to 14 billion euros into the operation. The electric Porsche Macan and Audi Q6 e-tron were both delayed by more than a year. They were delayed together because both depended on shared architecture. That was the machine working exactly as designed. Share the component, reduce the cost, multiply the blast radius. Volkswagen eventually paid Rivian approximately $5.8 billion for access to outside electrical and software architecture. The company that had tried to build one operating system for every brand was now paying another automaker to help provide it. Then came China, the market that had covered Volkswagen's weaknesses for decades. Volkswagen entered China in the 1980s, before most Western competitors. By 2019, it was delivering approximately 4.23 million vehicles there every year, close to half of the group's worldwide sales. The usual explanation is that Chinese customers simply love German engineering. The economic explanation is more revealing. China gave Volkswagen another enormous market in which mature, already paid-for engineering could continue generating returns. Platforms that had earned their development costs in Europe could be deployed through Chinese joint ventures and sold into a rapidly expanding market. Maximum amortization, minimum additional engineering. It was the purest expression of Volkswagen's model. Then, the value inside a car moved. It shifted away from traditional mechanical components and toward batteries, chips, and software. Those technologies also reward scale, but they reward vertical integration, rapid iteration, and direct control over the underlying technology, not merely the rebadging of mature engineering across 10 brands. That was BYD's advantage. Volkswagen's system was horizontal: build common components and distribute them across many badges. BYD's advantage was more vertical: control the battery, electronics, software, and manufacturing system more directly. Volkswagen had spent decades becoming the world's best company at amortizing yesterday's mechanical engineering. Chinese competitors were becoming better at controlling tomorrow's technology. The collapse was not gradual. Volkswagen's Chinese volume fell from more than 4 million vehicles to roughly 2.7 million. BYD passed Volkswagen in the Chinese market, and Geely later pushed it further down the ranking. In the first half of 2026 alone, Volkswagen's Chinese deliveries fell by approximately 26%. But then Volkswagen did something that quietly confirmed the entire diagnosis. To compete in China, it stopped insisting that the same system work for everyone. It expanded a local technology operation in Hefei, combined CARIAD's Chinese activities with support from XPeng, and developed a China-specific electronic architecture for Chinese models, suppliers, and customers. From initial concept to mass production took approximately 18 months, making it one of the fastest electrical architecture projects in Volkswagen Group history. The engineers had not suddenly become smarter. The company had removed the requirement that the system satisfy every brand and every market at once. Somebody inside Volkswagen had already understood the larger problem. Herbert Diess became chief executive in 2018 and repeatedly warned that Volkswagen needed to transform faster. He told the supervisory board that the company could carry approximately 30,000 excess workers in Germany if the electric transition failed. But changing Volkswagen meant confronting the structure that governed it. Labor representatives control half the seats on the supervisory board. Lower Saxony holds approximately 20% of the voting rights. The Porsche and Piëch families control more than half. In July 2022, the board removed Diess. The executive trying to reduce Volkswagen's dependence on its old machine had been defeated by the constituencies whose jobs, wealth, and political power depended on that machine continuing to operate. Then the damage reached Porsche. For years, Porsche was Volkswagen's crown jewel and profit engine. It was the reassuring answer to every concern about the lower margin parts of the group. In 2025, Porsche's operating profit fell from approximately €5.64 billion to €413 million. Its automotive operation came close to producing no profit at all. Porsche was also reportedly reconsidering electric-only architecture developed with Audi so that future vehicles could again accommodate combustion or hybrid systems. Once again, two brands had committed to one shared technological bet. When the bet failed, both inherited the cost. By 2025, Volkswagen Group's operating profit had fallen to its lowest level since 2016, the exact year it became the largest automaker on Earth. So in 2026, management began trying to take the machine apart. The initial plan for 35,000 German job cuts expanded into discussions of much deeper reductions across Volkswagen, Audi, Porsche, and CARIAD. Reports described the possibility of up to 100,000 job cuts worldwide, reduced investment, lower factory capacity, and the winding down of several German sites. Management also considered deleting a large portion of the model range, beginning with different branded versions of similar vehicles. Read that again. The rescue plan was to stop doing the thing Volkswagen had been built to do. For decades, Volkswagen created value by developing common engineering and selling variations of it through multiple brands. Now management was proposing fewer models, fewer factories, fewer workers, and fewer duplicated brand variants. But the structural proposal went further. Oliver Blume wanted to separate the core Volkswagen brand and the components business into distinct companies. That would have represented a direct attempt to dismantle the industrial structure built over generations. And then Volkswagen reached the wall toward which this entire story had been traveling. Under the Volkswagen law, Lower Saxony possesses enough voting power to block major structural changes. Labor representatives control half the supervisory board. The Porsche and Piëch families control another decisive block. In July 2026, the supervisory board refused to approve the complete restructuring proposal. Volkswagen had finally tried to take the machine apart. The structure surrounding it said no. 2 weeks later, Volkswagen cut its revenue outlook from possible growth to a decline of as much as 3%. Management admitted that factories remained underused. The company still carried a cost disadvantage of approximately 30% against important competitors, and at least €10 billion in additional overhead needed to disappear. Then came the most damning number in the entire story. Volkswagen Group's holdings in Porsche and the truck manufacturer Traton were worth approximately €44 billion. The whole Volkswagen Group was valued at less than €40 billion. The market had done the arithmetic and was effectively assigning a negative residual value to the industrial operation beneath those investments. The factories, the brands, the workforce, the modular toolkit, and the machine Ferdinand Piëch built. That is what Volkswagen actually proves. It did not simply forget how to engineer. Volkswagen engineered one idea better than anyone alive: build the same underlying car again and again, then sell it at different prices through different brands. The idea was not stupid. It was brilliant. It worked. It spread engineering costs across millions of vehicles. It financed an empire of brands. It helped make Volkswagen the largest automaker on Earth. Then the world stopped rewarding it. A system built around shared mechanical engineering encountered software that needed constant iteration, batteries that rewarded vertical control, Chinese competitors that moved faster, factories that required volumes Volkswagen could no longer supply, and a governance structure that made radical change almost impossible. You can replace a chief executive. Volkswagen has done that repeatedly. You can cut tens of thousands of workers if you can obtain the votes. What you cannot easily do is change the shape of a company when that shape is written into national law, defended by a state government, protected by labor representatives who sit on its board, and inherited by a family whose fortune was created by it. That is Volkswagen's trap. The most dangerous thing a company can own is not a bad idea. It is a brilliant idea that it is no longer allowed to put down.